Coming up, Dragon loses its legs.
Spaceplane!
I've got news and comments.
And I've got an interview with Adrian Tymes of CubeCab. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now.
Good morning. How's everything up in the sky?
Hello and welcome to episode 10.26. I am Carrie Ann. I have with me a hologram. I have a Jared. I've got a Dada. I've actually got, let me see if I can do this right. I've got a Lisa. And we'll also have another interview coming up a little bit later on. But first, before we get started, I want to make sure I give a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. These are the escape velocity variety. These are the people who give us $10 or more for this particular segment of this particular episode. And they also get access to our Discord channel and so much more. If you are also interested in becoming a Patreon patron, please head over to patreon.com/TMRO. Oh my goodness, this show. So unfortunately there's no launches, which is total sad face on that. But we do have news. We do have some potentially controversial news, but that's okay. I'm actually surprised there are more comments about our news sections more often.
Yeah.
That really surprises me. Hint, hint. Also, we have a great interview coming up. Lisa will be performing an interview or conducting an interview with Adrian Tymes, who is the CEO of CubeCab. So we'll all be learning all of that together. Adrian will be Skyping in a little bit later. And of course, we have comments about last week's show, because as you do like to comment on a lot of the things that we do. So why don't we go ahead and get started with, unfortunately, no launches, but we do have some space news. And Mike, we're just so used to hearing you talk first. Why don't you just go ahead?
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. So probably the biggest thing we wanted to talk about this week was on July 19th, SpaceX's founder, Elon Musk, gave an interview at the International Space Station Research and Development Conference. He was interviewed by Kirk Shireman, and during the question and answer segment of this talk, it was a very candid talk, and talked a lot about the Falcon 9, progress on Falcon Heavy, the Dragon updates, and there was some interesting news and some interesting things that he said during this. So first, I just wanted to show this clip, which is some breaking news regarding propulsive landings of their Dragon 2 capsule. So let's just check it out and hear it straight from him.
Hi Elon, quick question. I heard that Dragon is no longer planned to land propulsively. Is that true?
Yeah, that was a tough decision. Dragon is capable of landing. Dragon 2 is capable of landing propulsively. Technically, it still is. Although you'd have to land it on some pretty soft landing pad, because we've deleted the little legs that pop out of the heat shield. The reason we decided not to pursue that heavily is it would have taken a tremendous amount of effort to qualify that for safety, particularly for crew transport. And then there was a time when I thought that the Dragon approach to landing on Mars, we've got a base heat shield and side-mounted thrusters, would be the right way to land on Mars. But now I'm pretty confident that is not the right way, and that there's a far better approach. So just the difficulty of safely qualifying Dragon for propulsive landing, and the fact that from a technology evolution standpoint, it was no longer in line with what we were confident was the optimal way to land on Mars. That's why we are not pursuing it. It could be something that we bring back later. But it doesn't seem like the right way to apply resources right now.
You can tell he's really kind of upset about it. Not to overspeak you, but it sounds like he is really upset about it. I've never heard him so just sort of soft-spoken before. That was interesting. I like having the video clip there. So sorry, go on. You were saying.
And I mean, that sums it up pretty nicely. And it's just interesting how one piece of, one component of this plan can change their plans so drastically. Removing these landing legs would no longer have the propulsive capability, but just like he said, that could still be an option in the future. Mm-hmm. But the difficulty of getting the safety requirements in order to have crew on board those type of flights to have a propulsive landing somewhere would just be too much of a struggle to still be on time. And it is on time. Right now, Dragon 2 is still keeping its schedule to have their test test flights next year and start operations in 2019, full operations. So I'm really looking forward to that. But he also talked about a couple other things that I wanted to touch on real quickly. There's a quick clip here regarding Falcon Heavy, and it kind of seems like he doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in it, but that it's going to be cool one way or other. Let's check this out.
Okay.
There's a lot of risk associated with Falcon Heavy. Real good chance that that vehicle does not make it to orbit. There's like, a lot that could go wrong there. I encourage people to come down to the Cape and see the first Falcon Heavy mission. It's guaranteed to be exciting.
Nice.
For sure. I really hope that mission is successful, but that also makes me feel a little bit better about it. I mean, if Elon himself isn't confident that it's going to work, then that lets me not get my hopes up that it's going to work. And if it doesn't fail, that's okay, that's almost expected. So beyond that, the only other thing that I wanted to talk about that he mentioned in this is with all these changes and no longer being able to do the Red Dragon missions of having Dragon capsules land propulsively on Mars, that's going to significantly change their ITS, the Interplanetary Transport System. And he's updating that plan and is going to present to the public a new updated version of that with a smaller vehicle in the next International Astronomical Union Congress, which is going to be in Adelaide, Australia. So looking forward to that. But there was a really interesting thing that he said that might be changing SpaceX's path instead of heading straight to Mars. And this is in regards to the moon. So let's just check out the clip.
If you want to get the public real fired up, I think we gotta have a base on the moon. It's like that would be pretty cool. And then going beyond that, getting people to Mars.
Yeah.
So just a small comment, but holy cow, does that mean Elon is moon first now?
Interesting. I suppose. I mean, all he ever said was that he wanted to retire on Mars. He didn't say how he was going to get there. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, personally, I'm okay with that, and it'd be interesting to still see some sort of propulsive landing stuff happen, and instead of Red Dragon missions, it'd be cool to see some Gray Dragon missions first or something like that, but in any case, we're just going to have to see how things develop in the future, but it's always interesting to see the constantly evolving plans and hardware at SpaceX.
Totally. I mean, to be fair, red is really Tesla's color, so there is kind of that, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, boo. I know. Sorry. Not sorry. So, Jared, this is something we haven't talked about in a little while.
Yeah.
Tell me more about Dreamchaser.
I thought I'd bring it back because, first of all, spaceplane. Everybody on tomorrow
Spaceplane,
really loves
spaceplane.
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 Yes.
So the Sierra Nevada Corporation is actually starting new ground tests on their Dreamchaser test vehicle. And it's happening right now out at Edwards Air Force Base
It's
here
so cute.
in California. I know. And it's just for scale. Since we don't have a banana there for scale. It's about a quarter of the size of the space shuttle. So it's not a very big vehicle compared with something the size of the space shuttle. Sure. But this is a full-scale atmospheric test model, and it's being used at the moment for brake and steering checks. So they tow it up to speed, and then they release it, and they test the steering and the brakes on it. And they're going to continue these tests for the rest of the year. They're also going to include a captive carry test where they lift it up on a helicopter and fly it around, and kind of like showing it off to everybody in that area, I suppose. And they're going to do another approach and landing test, which they did back in 2013, which we all remember that one part of the landing gear didn't deploy for that, so it ended up rolling on the runway. But still survived intact, and they said that if there had been astronauts on board, they would have been fine. So
nice.
Interesting. I guess that's one way to test the crash abilities of your vehicle.
Right.
Another nice thing is that new details have been revealed about the cargo variant that was selected under NASA's Commercial Resupply Services 2 contract. Mm-hmm. Now, the cargo variant is going to be able to deliver 5,500 kilograms to the International Space Station, and it's going to be launching aboard a United Launch Alliance Atlas V in the 552 configuration. So it's going to squeeze into a 5-meter payload fairing. Mm-hmm. It's going to have 5 strap-on solid rocket boosters, and it will be using a 2-engine Centaur upper stage. So not a single engine, 2-engine Centaur upper stage. Now, Sierra Nevada Corporation says that they may launch Dreamchaser as soon as 2019. And it's going to be joining SpaceX's Dragon 2 and Orbital ATK's Enhanced Cygnus cargo craft under the Commercial Resupply Services 2 contract. So Very cool stuff. So we've got a capsule that can return stuff. We've got a disposable cargo vehicle, which is important for throwing trash away.
Totally.
And then we've got a space plane as well. So it's like the trifecta of cargo vehicle design. So
All the things I always wanted in my space-faring systems.
Excellent. It's good stuff. I'm so excited about it.
It is good stuff. Space Kyle in the chat room is asking, has the 552 configuration ever been flown?
So the 552 as a whole has never been flown.
Okay.
But each individual part of that has flown. There have been twin-engine Centaur upper stages in the past, and obviously the Atlas V has flown in the 551 configuration with the 5-meter payload carrying 5 strap-on solid rocket boosters and a single-engine Centaur upper stage. But yeah, so they're confident that it's going to go off without a hitch.
So it's sort of like if I was going to rebuild my Subaru, for instance, and I took a really good engine out of that Subaru, and I took some really nice tires off of that Subaru, and I put them onto my lovely shell of a Subaru.
Exactly.
I should still be confident that it'll go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Dutta may know.
I know,
if
Dutta's
that's
laughing
good
at me.
too.
It's
Yeah,
exactly
Dutta's
why I chose
giggling in
Subaru.
the back, so.
Something interesting too about the Centaur is the early versions of Centaur all flew with 2 engines, and it was once they switched over to Atlas V that it was using just the single engine version of that. So this is kind of nice to see the return of the 2-engine Centaur that hasn't flown in quite a long time. Last mission might have been what, like in the 80s before Centaur 3
wow.
even?
I think it might have been in the 90s with Atlas. With Atlas.
I'd ask you to tell me how you remember by how old you were, but I don't want to feel older than that, so we'll just keep moving. Thank you, Jared. I appreciate it. All right, so Mike, I saw this title, and I did not get very excited about it, but you have a lot to say about the House voting and the 2018 NASA budget.
And the reason why, I guess the reason why I'm excited about this is because there have been certain programs that the White House, the Trump administration, has called for canceling. And there's been a lot of concerns about what direction NASA is going to go. And, we have the whole thing with the National Space Council and all that sort of stuff, and we're just unsure of how things are going to go. And this is just the second piece of deciding next year's budget for NASA, and also in regard to the Space Corps as well. And the Senate still needs to do all of their voting on it, but the House Appropriations Committee has voted, and let's just go through it. First off, let's go through the exploration program. The House wants to have the same spending for Space Launch System and Orion as last year, and the president wanted less than that, but the House wants to have more money go towards the ground systems and the research and development so that we can have more streamlined operations and hopefully bring down the cost of Space Launch System. Next up, for the science programs, and here's where a lot of the heated debates were coming from, for the planetary science program, the president was asking for more money than last year, and the House wants even more money than the president has been requesting for this. And for Earth sciences, this is a little bit alarming. The president was asking for less money than last year for the Earth Science program. He was even talking about canceling programs completely outright. And the House is asking for slightly less than what the Trump administration is asking for. So that's a bit concerning. And aside from that, though, the House wants to have more spending, or at least equal levels, for the astrophysics program, same level of spending for James Webb and for the Helios physics program. So that's pretty cool that everyone's in agreement there. But then for the next programs, for the space operations program, this is the program that manages the International Space Station and the commercial crew and cargo programs. The president wanted slightly less money than last year, and the House has voted on even less money than what the president asked for. They're asking for almost $300 million less than last year, and that's just not going to help things out very well at all. I'm very concerned about that. But aside from that, the other big programs was the education program. The president was talking about ending that program and funding a little over $30 million to close out the program, and the House has pretty much ignored that, and they're going to continue the education program, which is a lot of scholarship programs, but slightly less funding than last year. And really interestingly, for the space technology program, even though it's a small chunk of the funding, it's going to be the same as last year, and there's some really interesting prerogatives that they have asked for. They've been directed to spend $35 million for nuclear thermal propulsion technology, which hasn't seriously been studied since the 80s and was really studied in the 60s. And they also want $45 million for the Restore-L satellite servicing program. And there's a requirement that NASA has to submit a draft conceptual roadmap to have the first interstellar mission. They have to deliver that report by May 2018. So that's interesting that Congress is directing NASA to look at interstellar missions. So that's really interesting. But in any case, it's all up to the Senate now. It's all up to the Senate whether or not to fund these things at the same level as the House does, or to go with what the White House, what the Trump administration has been asking for. And if you live in the United States and you disagree with some of these programs, like the funding that they're going for the Earth science programs, it is up to us as space advocates to get in touch with our local senators and tell them how we want to go. The Senate will be a very deciding factor in how the programs are going to go for this part forward. And I'm paying closer attention to budgets now with the whole administration change and how NASA is going to be formulated over the next 4 years. So this is really important to me, and I apologize if this is boring to some of you, but I think it's interesting and we need to get involved.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
and one other thing, the Space Corps, I completely forgot to mention. I'm so sorry that this is dragging on. But there was a proposal to hold off on the whole Space Corps decision and to instead have a study to see whether or not it would be a good idea or not. And since not enough of the representatives voted on that study, essentially the Space Corps has passed in the House because no one voted against it and everyone just kind of voted for it to push the budget through. So again, that's also on the Senate as to whether or not to make Space Corps thing or not. Yeah. So yeah, that's your policy update for this week.
Yeah, Lars von Braun in the chat room is saying it's not boring, it's important.
Quite.
And Dada also had another comment saying basically the same kind of thing. It may not be exciting, but it is important. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, also really hard to take politics out of spaceflight simply because a lot of spaceflight was born and is sort of overseen by politics as well.
I mean, it's a government-run agency, so
yeah.
there's that. Although Ben Credible is saying that we need a TMRO Corps. I'm not sure how that would work.
How would that work?
I believe we have a TMRO Corps. I think they're separated into ground support, suborbital.
Nice.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Now that's a save.
Very nice. Oh, yes. So many things to say.
Anyway.
But I'm not going to. So, Jared.
Yes.
You have some terrible news about Lisa.
Well, it's kind of terrible. Not our Lisa here, not Lisa Stoge, but
She's in the background like, wait, what?
the mission Lisa, which is the Laser Interferometer Space Antenna. So this is basically the European Space Agency's Can We Do It mission for a future gravitational wave observatory, and it has come to its conclusion. They put it into a passivated orbit as it would basically go around the sun, way away from Earth, and shut down the systems on board. Now, this is known as Lisa Pathfinder, and it was actually launched in December of 2015 to test if the systems for a full-scale Lisa mission would even work in space. And those systems worked. Actually, within 24 hours of turning on the systems, the European Space Agency engineers were saying, this is better than we were expecting it to be. So it was literally like 1 day in space, and it was already doing so much better than was expected with what was done on the ground. So basically, there are these 2 gold test masses inside of it. They are 46 millimeter cubed in size, so they're very, very small, but they have to be in a constant state of free fall within their respective test chambers inside of the spacecraft. And they found that they could do that. The restraints that hold on to those gold test masses, they were removed from those test masses flawlessly without adding any sort of energy into them to move them around in the test chamber. They also recaptured them as well during points during the mission in case, sort of like testing a just in case if they have to actually fix those test masses on the actual full-scale Lisa mission in the future. And that worked as well. The laser systems to detect the subtle movements of those test masses, it worked. The micro thrusters developed by NASA worked as well. So this is going to, and those thrusters, by the way, allowed Lisa Pathfinder to be 10,000 times more stable than any satellite flown before. So, which is just like ridiculous to think about. Now, these technologies were of the utmost criticalness to prove the success of the upcoming full-scale LISA mission, which will fly 3 spacecraft in formation 1 million kilometers apart from each other to measure the changes in distances using lasers. And those changes they're going to measure over a million kilometers, they're going to be a few millionths of a meter. And that's the type of precision you have to have in order to get actually the data on gravitational waves. Now, just in June, the European Space Agency did approve the official formal start for the full-scale LISA mission, which will be launched sometime in 2034. So, very exciting stuff. Excellent mission, in just all around, just a great mission. So,
Really great name, too.
Pretty good name. So.
Yeah, we can all stand behind that one. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Well, I only say those things because A, Ben would probably say those similar things, and or he would be negative about it, and then B, because Lisa is not one to toot her own horn, and she definitely deserves it.
Yeah.
So there's that. So now I did that. Mr. Mike, we made some way on the International Space Station. Is that correct? What's going on up there?
Yeah, just a little vehicle swap out. The Progress MS-05 spacecraft, which has been docked for 6 months, has undocked. So let's check out the footage of that. And obviously, I had to speed this up quite a bit because it took quite a long time for this operation to happen. But as I said, it's been up there for 6 months. It was docked to the Piers docking compartment and undocked on July 20th, which just so happened to be the 48th anniversary of the moon landing. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
It's making room for the next Soyuz launch. They'll have a crew on board, and we'll dock to that same port where it undocked from. It's kind of hard to see there with it being dark there, but you can see its docking light as it separates away from it. Now, shortly after this, it flew away from the space station and did a braking maneuver, re-entered the atmosphere, and burned up shortly thereafter. And this was the last Progress vehicle that was launched on the Soyuz U rocket. That rocket is now going to be retired, and they're going to be utilizing only the Soyuz 2-1, 1A or 1B rockets from here on out that have the digital flight hardware and digital flight software, excuse me. So there won't be, hopefully, as many problems as they had over the last couple of years with Progress launches. So great that this mission is over, and hopefully the next launch next week will be really exciting for the next 3 crew members. So looking forward to that.
Very cool. I can't wait till this would just be as silly a story as like, well, there was a car that left today, and then later on,
Pulled out of the parking lot.
totally different car,
My Uber's
got in that
here.
same spot. Yeah, it's like just waiting for that day. It'll be really, really amazing.
Yeah.
Not to downplay the story, like it's great and I'm totally interested, but it was just kind of funny. It's like, yeah, no, one guy left and somebody else is coming in soon.
A whole bunch
so
of dirty
that's cool.
underwear was just removed.
Yeah, but I mean, like, my
International Space
analogy
Station.
is it's like the only building on the planet, and it's the only cars on the planet coming in and out of the parking lot. So yeah, big deal. It's a big deal.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I
It's
love
the
it.
tiny parking lot between the liquor store and the laundromat.
Right. That's
And
it.
you know what? If you don't believe this parking lot exists, you can go check it out on Google Maps right now. It's on Street View now.
That's
so
true.
This is true. This is so true, which is really exciting. All right, before we wrap up news, Jared, you've got some things that I can't pronounce. So
Yes, that's a seismometer. And that's integration. And that's
no, these words are way too big for
So
me.
okay, so some really exciting news that actually came from Twitter this week, which was Dr. Thomas Zurbuchen, NASA's Associate Administrator of the Science Mission Directorate. He announced on Twitter that the troubled seismometer of NASA's InSight mission is finally fixed, and it's here in the United States to begin integration with the InSight lander. Now, it was originally set to launch in March of 2016, but there were problems that came when trying to seal the seismometer in a vacuum, and the seismometer is provided by the French space agency CNES, and the launch, they decided to delay it. There were some questions as to whether this mission was even going to go forward or not, but they eventually did say, yeah, we'll do it. And now it's going to be ready for launch in the next window, which is going to open on May 8th of 2018. It'll launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base on an Atlas V 401. This will be the first interplanetary launch, by the way, from Vandenberg, so
Nice.
very excited about that. Now, the reason that this seismometer was such a trouble is because it is sensitive enough to detect the movement down to half the width of a hydrogen atom. So that's like really good at being able to do that. Now, when it does that, there will be like a little cover over the seismometer to prevent things like wind and dust from moving the seismometer when it's placed directly onto the surface of Mars. And it's going to allow for the detection of Mars quakes, which by using the seismic wave data from those Mars quakes as they come through, we can actually do a precise characterization of the interior of Mars. So just like how here on Earth we know what's in the interior of the Earth from the seismic waves as they travel through the Earth and detecting them all over the Earth, we're going to do the exact same thing on Mars, except our seismometer is so sensitive, we only need one seismometer to do that, not a network of them. Also, another cool thing it'll be able to do, it'll be able to detect impact events from meteoroids, which is very important if you're going to build something like a Mars base on the surface of Mars. You need to know what that actual rate is. And this is going to be a really exciting mission. This is going to be doing like hardcore geology on the surface of Mars, which right now we've been sort of doing like moderate geology with our rovers that we have on Mars. This is like a pure geology mission. And I'm very excited about it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
On a slightly personal note, we made Lisa watch The Core over the weekend. And so when you said that we know exactly what the interior of the Earth looks like, all I could see were all these weird images of like gigantic diamonds and then air gap for some unknown reason. And then
that's not how that works.
But good stuff. If you haven't seen it, you
it's
really
a geode the size of Texas. No, not really.
So good.
So, yeah.
All right.
Enough. It's a bad movie.
It's like, yes. So we'll just go directly into break. And when we come back, Lisa will then have control of the next segment, which is our interview with, again, Adrian Tymes, the CEO of CubeCab. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
Hello and welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get started with our interview with Adrian Tymes from CubeCab, I would love to give a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, our crowdfunders that help make this show go. So thank you to our Escape Velocity supporters who give $10 or more per episode. They get access to our exclusive Discord channel and their name in the show. But we also have our Orbital subscribers as well. These are the people that give us $5 or more per episode. They get their name in the show and worldwide shipping for our swag store. So if you'd like to support the shows of tomorrow as well, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. Now today we have Adrian Tymes here, the CEO of CubeCab. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to be with us today, Adrian. So could you tell us a little bit about what CubeCab is and why does CubeCab actually exist? What was the reason for its creation?
So what CubeCab is a developer of small launch vehicles, specifically 5-kilogram payload to low Earth orbit, CubeSat. As to why we exist, so currently if you have a CubeSat and you want to take it to orbit, you can only ride share. Means you have to go where the rocket takes you. You have to wait for the rocket to manifest, which is typically a year or two. If you're doing anything dangerous, like if you have payload or propulsion on your satellite, other payloads may get you kicked off, and you may not get your satellite or money back, or so I hear. So what we're doing is making dedicated launches for CubeSats. You can take your orbit. You only have to wait for the government paperwork to clear, which is typically a few months. Nobody else can kick you off the ride because you are the only payload on the launch, and so on and so forth. Also, we are the cheapest ride to orbit in terms of full mission cost at $250,000 per ride. The closest competitor we know of Takes about 4 times our payload and goes for 1.2 million a ride, and then they get more expensive from there.
So there's CubeCab. You guys are specifically focusing on payloads of around 5 kilos or less, yeah? So you've got
Yes.
a bit of a market. It kind of seems like CubeSats themselves are kind of the trend in space at the moment, because you've got like universities, every university under the sun seems to be building their own CubeSat these days. So is that the kind of market that you're aiming for?
Yes, our market is primarily academic. In fact, if you look up the standard charts of this, and I'll say Swartwout is the best chart out there. You can see the majority of CubeSats being launched these days are from universities, with commercial being a strong second, especially if you include constellations.
Are you using any new technologies to kind of close your business case? Because universities, they have the money, but they don't have a whole lot of money. So how are you kind of making that price low enough so that universities can jump on board and become your customers?
Commercial off the shelf, for one. Also, my crew has quite a bit of experience in many startups doing stuff for cheap. As my CFO puts it, we are cheap. I'm not sure if I can say that word. But yeah, we do have many decades experience in cost containment. We are doing automated manufacture as much as possible, automated launch processing as much as possible. In fact, we were talking with the National Reconnaissance Office just earlier this week about how we can get launch processing down to much less than a single day. So they could, in theory, because they have these classified payloads they want to have security on, have an agent of theirs drive up on launch day and have eyes on the package the entire launch processing cycle right up through when it gets launched.
Wow, that's cool. Are you using stuff like 3D printing to kind of make sure that all your kind of processing times, build times, and everything like that are kind of as short as possible? Like, because I know 3D printing is kind of another, along with CubeSats, is kind of another big thing that everyone seems to be talking about these days.
Yes, we are. And it helps that our rocket is small enough that we can print large components in 3D. So there's no seams, we reduce the parts count, there's a lot less joins that can break off, that kind of thing.
Nice, that's awesome. How are you going to fund all of this development?
That's the interesting question. We are looking around for funding right now. Again, we're in talk with National Reconnaissance Office. They're one of our potential sources. Problem is that a lot of the VCs around here, they want to invest after you have signed customers. And we've got a few, but they're looking for more. They're thinking in the software model where you don't have to have much money before you got 1 million customers, and then they can invest. Whereas with any hardware company, especially rocketry, it's kind of the other way around. You need money before you get a lot of customers. That said, we do have a strong letter of interest, and we're doing a press release about this next Monday, from a company called ThumbSat, which is doing some-sized satellites. And they just announced that they want to launch 1,000 satellites through us. Now, they're really tiny ones, so like 20 of theirs.
Did I hear that right? 1,000?
1,000, yes.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. Now, the trick is, of course, that they're really tiny ones, so 20 can come up to 51 use, so they're announcing they're launching 51 use through us, but still, 1,000 satellites in a single deal. We are not aware immediately of any other small satellite, single by order, that's large. We're aware of some that have gotten spread out of a bunch of launch companies, but one company to one launch company, yeah.
And how tiny are these little satellites that you'll be launching?
So the ones we're launching are CubeSats, 1U to 3U. They are about 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 30 centimeter. Get that. That's about the size. Now their stuff is again thumb size, so that's why they're called ThumbSats.
That's so cool. I kind of wish my university had done something like that, but you know, we didn't really have the funding to do that, which is why it's so important that people like you come along and kind of make it more accessible to more people. But can you tell us a little bit more?
Well, if I can do a quick plug on that, NASA CubeSat Launch Initiative is trying to find a bunch more universities that want to launch something, and they will pay for it.
Oh, that's awesome.
U.S. universities only, of course, but.
Oh, okay. So I'm Australian, so that doesn't apply to me. But that sounds awesome for people in the US. If you're a university student, go check it out because that's an awesome opportunity. Can you tell us a little bit more about how CubeCab will be launching? So what altitude are you launching your rockets from? Because they're getting a ride on a F-104, aren't they? Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. So we're doing air launch, which is you strap the rocket to a plane, you fly out, in our case over the Atlantic Ocean, and it's basically firing a missile except into orbit instead of to the ground. We're using the F-104s, Vietnam era planes because, well, they are cheap, and again, see cost containment. Our launch base is Kennedy Space Center because the F-104s we're using are owned by Starfighter Group, which is based out of Kennedy Space Center, so just let them take care of that. So yeah, we say our launch point is over the Atlantic Ocean, although from the FAA's perspective, Kennedy is our launch base because we are legally obliged to count the aircraft as stage 1.
Wow, so there's a
also means that we are under reusable launch vehicle regulations.
Oh, cool. So does that kind of improve the regulatory process, or does that kind of make it a bunch harder being classed as a reusable launch vehicle?
Well, there is more paperwork and more reporting. On the other hand, once we have proven the first flight successful, that makes it easier to prove the subsequent flights. Because we have to do stuff like prove that an F-104 that has been flying for decades will not spontaneously combust upon takeoff, because it is the first stage of the launch vehicle. And, well, I'm sure you understand they want proof that the first stage of a launch vehicle isn't going to immediately combust and send debris all over a presumably populated launch area.
We have another question from the chat room. So Wubba Lubba asks, 1,000 satellites, there's still room for all of our junk up there? How does the ISS dodge it, or how come the existing satellites don't collide? So I guess what we're asking here is, what kind of orbits will you be putting all your different satellites into?
Yes, the orbital debris question. So we are aiming for 400-kilometer polar, mid over 500-kilometer equatorial orbits, which is a lot lower than most of the orbital debris. As for how does the ISS dodge it, well, I think it was Arthur C. Clarke who said space is big, really big. I may be having the attribution wrong there, but these orbits can be tracked and plotted, and in the orbits around where the ISS is, there isn't that much of a concern. The orbits in question are really 800 to a few thousand kilometers, where there have been like an anti-satellite test and a collision and that kind of stuff. And up there, if you have stuff, it just stays up. Whereas down at 400, 500 kilometers or smaller, the atmosphere is still thick enough that over years, orbits naturally degrade. The ISS needs to reboost every so often in order to fall back into the atmosphere. So the stuff we're launching, if the satellite's dead on orbit, it will decay back into the atmosphere within 25 years, probably a lot less.
And it helps because you guys are launching things that are so small as well, so they're going to be decaying over a faster period of time because they're so small. So I guess, yeah, the ISS doesn't have anything to worry about.
Not necessarily. I mean, smaller, you got smaller surface area as well. And we do have to watch out because, again, we are launching a lot of university satellites, so a lot of the satellites we're going to be launching are going to be the first satellite a certain group has done, which with quality control accordingly. So we need to make sure that if the satellite malfunctions, it will just plop back into the atmosphere.
Nice. It's good to have that on paper so you kind of know that you're not contributing to that space junk problem, which is a serious problem that we're going to have to be working out in the future. We've got another question from the chat room here. So we have Paco De Niro asks, will the rocket be recovered? So I know that your F-104 will be coming back intact, but your rocket itself that you're strapping onto it, is that going to be coming back, or is that going to be destroyed?
Not at first. So our first generation is completely expendable. Now, we may develop a reusable rocket eventually. So our plan is to achieve a very high flight rate at first. We are targeting at least 100 launches a year. So you guys were complaining about no launches this week. Well, if we do what we are hoping to, that will never be a problem for them again. There are some projections that we may be able to get up to 1,000 satellites a year, or 1,000 launches a year, or more.
Wow.
Yeah, so our operations are going to have to be automated manufacturing and pit crew-like processing.
Nice.
And so eventually it may make sense for us to develop a reusable rocket once we have that going. But first we have to, so one of the big problems with a reusable rocket is you have to amortize the cost across a bunch of launches. Even the space shuttle fleet, over its entire multi-decade career, all 5 launchers, only 140, that's 140 launches in all that time. Not that many customers. With CubeSats, there are a whole bunch of customers, so we can do a whole bunch of individual launches, and a lot of people have been saying, including Scott Post, the guy being nominated to the National Space Council, that you have to get a high flight rate to drop the launch costs. So CubeCab is primarily about getting that high flight rate so we can eventually drop the launch costs and then fund development of a better technology going forward.
Speaking of the technology that you guys are developing, I've got another question from the chat room here. So Sarge Enzyme is asking, how are you going to eject 1,000 sats from your rocket? So what kind of dispenser do you envisage? So have you guys been working on your deployment systems for CubeCab as well?
So there is a standard CubeSat deployer called the P-Pod, developed by Cal Poly. We are envisioning getting something like that mounted and built as part of our rocket. And so as for ejecting our satellites from the rocket, it'll be just a standard CubeSat deployment. You use spring loading and you just pop it out. If you go to CubeSat.org, they have a CubeSat specification which includes how you deploy CubeSats and what it looks like from the CubeSat's perspective. So SpaceX is planning to package, like I said, 20 of these satellites into a 1U form factor. So we deploy essentially a 1U CubeSat, and then they have a deployer to spring out the 20 SpaceX from a 1U that has been deployed.
Cool. So a deployer that deploys another deployer. It's like deployerception. I've got another question from the chat room here, and Neuropilot is asking, is the rocket based on existing rockets like an AIM-7 missile, or is it completely a new design that you guys are working on? And how far along are you guys in the development of your launcher?
New design, and we are doing simulations at the moment. We've done a few ground tests, but for the most part, once we can finish getting the funding, we just buy stuff, prove it works to specification, and go. But yeah, it's going to be a new rocket technically. All solid is our current plan, so it's very much existing concepts, existing proven technology. It's just the rocket itself is new.
When do you expect to have your first launch?
First orbital launch, 2 years after funding. So if we were fully funded now, 2019, but again, looking for funding.
Awesome. So what are your next steps then? Are you looking to expand your team, or is your focus right now on getting that funding, or is it on developing your launcher or getting through regulations?
Getting that funding and doing what development we can. We do have some money. We have some right back to basically friends and family, and we're doing what analysis we can while we are trying to get the large funding. Just a few million though. But yeah.
I guess, do you have any background in working with things like Kickstarters or alternative methods of securing funding for projects like these?
So we've looked at Kickstarters, and unfortunately, the largest Kickstarters get to a few $1 million if you have big celebrity backing and a whole bunch of other resources that we don't have. So we suspect that Kickstarter is not going to work out too well for us.
Hopefully something comes along in the aerospace industry. I know that this show in particular, we kind of lived off ad revenue for a while, and then all of a sudden Patreon came along, and that kind of really brought a new life to the show with, and thank you to our Patreon supporters as well. So yeah, maybe we could look into a kind of Patreon for the aerospace company, crowdfunding a space program might be something to think about in the future.
The amounts that we're looking for don't really work out too well for that. I mean, 5 to 6 million funding for the development program, 250K for a launch. These are not amounts that just everyone off the street has in their pocket. Whereas Patreon does work on like 1 or 10 or 100 at a time.
Yeah, I guess something to think about in the future. Maybe someone has a great idea on like how we can move forward into kind of this new space way of funding the big money that's required for space. I mean, people say space is hard, but space takes a lot of money too. So maybe in a few years, someone will kind of have a solution for that. But we'll see how we go. Another question from the chat room. This one comes off of Twitch actually, and it's from the Action09, and they want to know a little bit about the fees that goes towards tracking the bits and bobs that go to space. So do orbital launch companies pay some of the fees that goes towards the tracking of the CubeSats that has to go on to monitor where they are?
Well, it depends on their model. The way we're doing it, not directly. I mean, we pay through taxes, of course, but the tracker is based out of the U.S. Air Force, which is taxpayer funded. There is licensing to prove that you are safe to launch, but that money goes to the FAA to cover their cost of the study. There is fees to cover if you're doing a telemetry and launch application for the FCC. Then you have to file with the NOAA and DOS, but those don't really cost money. So yeah, not directly.
All right, I think we might head into our 5 general questions that we ask everyone at the end of every interview here. There are no right or wrong answers here, so just go with the first thing that comes to your mind. They're really general. So the first one that we have here is Moon or Mars first?
Are you talking from a company perspective or my personal perspective?
This is just from a personal perspective here. These are just kind of really general questions that we like to ask every guest at the end of the show, just to learn a little bit more about them.
Okay, personal perspective, asteroids. And actually, I've written up a plan starting with planetary resources or deep space industries, like identify an asteroid, move it into the Earth-Moon system as close as politically acceptable. I think you can't get any closer than Geo, and even that would be tricky. Set up a manned mining camp there, and mine enough platinum, return it to the Earth to cover the cost, and generate that into a manned space colony eventually. I can provide more details, but that's getting off topic for this interview.
That's awesome. We should probably add a third one to that question then. Moon or Mars first or asteroids first? That's cool. The next question is, would you go?
Would I go to space or any particular destination?
Well, the question is just, would you go?
So CubeCab does not launch human-rated cargo. I mean, unless like you've died and you got incinerated and we're sending your ashes up. But yeah, so not applicable for CubeCab. If a viable space colony was set up, then I might go if I was of use to them. Sure. But in my case, the destination would matter, not just go to space. A lot of people would just go to space. Yeah, no question there. Good luck to them. For me, I go where I'm useful.
Awesome. When do you think humans will first land on Mars?
The 21st century.
Anything more specific? Or are you just hedging all your bets there?
Hedging. Very, very much hedging.
That's a nice strategy. That's awesome. Okay, when do you think humans will first set foot on the moon again?
See previous answer.
Oh, you're going to win all the bets here. Okay, and our 5th question, why space?
A number of reasons. The primary one is unlimited resources. Earth has a finite amount, a lot more than people say there is, but still, eventually there's going to be only so much Earth, even if we like colonize the bottom of the sea. Space, there ain't no such limit.
That's awesome. All right.
Second reason, exploration, finding out the origin of the universe. Third reason, well, see the overview effect. People experiencing what it is to be in our place in the universe. Also, if you can get a space colony going, you could probably get a lot better environmental effects and, of course, no natural disasters, and generally engineer a better living environment for people to exist in. I mean, how would you like to live in a place where the weather is scheduled, where there are no earthquakes, typhoons, or anything of that nature? For one thing, you'd probably live a lot longer, on average.
That'd definitely be something to experience. Before we head off today into our next break, one more question. Where can people find more information about you and about CubeCab?
CubeCab.com.
Awesome. All right, Adrian, thank you so much for your time today. We're going to head into a break, and when we come back, we're going to have comments from last week's show. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We've always looked to the stars. They guide us, give us comfort, help us find our way. We see ourselves out there. When we look up, it inspires us. And we long for something we don't yet know. We yearn to go there. So, we venture forth.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not.
Many think we stopped exploring. But we know our journey didn't end.
T-minus 1 minute.
We've only just begun.
Orion is functioning perfectly at this point.
Come with us and explore tomorrow.
Welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get into comments from last week's show, we'd love to give a huge thank you again to our Patreon subscribers, specifically our Escape Velocity members who give $10 or more per episode to the show. They get access to our exclusive Discord channel and their name in the show. But we also have our Orbital subscribers who give us $5 or more to the show per episode. They get access to free worldwide shipping on our swag store and their name in the show. But we also have our suborbital subscribers as well, and they give us $2.50 up to $4.99 per show. They get access to After Dark as soon as it's available and their name in the show. If you'd like to support the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO.
Good job with that, the payment thing. You're just saying stuff and then you're like, wait, I can do this math, hold on. To 49, yep, that's what it is. Because that's not written.
No, I was trying to convert from Australian dollars. That was my issue.
So escape velocity in Australian dollars is like 45,000 Australian dollars?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Qubits and
29
credits.
cents or something.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So...
Oh my goodness. Okay, so these comments, of course, are from last week's show in which Lisa did also another amazing interview with blah, 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 blah. That's what I said. With Astro Athens, Athena Brensberger. Really, really good job with that. You two seem to hit it off very well, and I'm glad that was you and not me. I would have been crazy intimidated. So So there's that. First comment, of course, comes off of Twitter. This one is from a Jason Hammond, at Jason Hammond. Very creative. I did the same thing with my Twitter account. Finally caught up with tomorrow. Thanks, Astro Athens, for your optimism and ambitions for new audiences. Ace hosting by Lisa Stoge 2. Hashtag Patreon Pride. I'm kind of like that hashtag.
I like that hashtag too. I'm going to use it all the time.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, no, you guys did a great job. You both seem very comfortable. I almost didn't recognize our own show because I was like, oh, well, see, it's Lisa's show now, and that's what's going on, which obviously it's Lisa's show now. People are asking where Ben went, and we're all like, don't care. It's fine.
I had a lot of fun doing that interview. Athena was great. She's a science communicator and I'm a science communicator. So, you know, we had a lot to talk about and a lot in common. So it was great. I had a great time.
Yeah. Very good. I love it. Next comment comes off of YouTube. I almost said comes off of Andre. It comes from Andre, I suppose. From Andre Jansen Medeiros. Medeiros. Thank you, Villar. Yes. So good. Andre's gonna be like, that's not how you say it. While watching this show, I realized you've recently made an effort to interview more women, and this is great. STEM is very women. Women in STEM, I think is what we're trying to say, are very underrepresented with too few women staying in STEM fields. I'd like to propose a lofty goal for tomorrow, keeping women guests and hosts at or above 60% of the total number of people appearing on an episode. Get some Grace Hopper clips into the intro if you need to. You know, first of all, I want to say thank you to that. I appreciate the observation. We do, of course, we try to have as many women presenters and guests and all of that other fun stuff as much as humanly possible. But at or above 60% is just simply not a reasonable goal. That's just.
Although right now we have 66% female presence on screen. So.
We do, but. It's just.
Oh, wait, sorry, Mike. I forgot about Mike.
Wow. I feel like it's equal right now, 50-50. Where's this extra 16%?
Hologram is gender neutral. I'm not sure if you noticed.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Hologram doesn't count. But really, I mean, and Lisa, I'm sure you run into this sort of thing where they just aren't the women in the STEM and sciences programs. They just don't exist, which is really unfortunate and something we would like to continue to encourage. However, it's just not realistic for us to say, well, you know, from here on out, you know, we've already interviewed 12 men this season, and so therefore the rest must all be women. It's just not simply going to be a thing. However, if you are a woman or know a woman who may be interested in the STEM areas, science, technology, engineering, I almost said education, engineering and math, please feel free to encourage them. Show them what you're interested in and why. Mm-hmm. And that's what this entire show is about outreach and getting to everybody. We want everyone to be excited about space. We're super excited about space, and we're all at different levels, right? So anybody can be interested and excited and involved in space, and that includes women of all shapes and sizes and ages and all of the other things. So thank you. I appreciate the comment. However, it's just not super realistic, but we will do every effort and we expect you to do the same.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Anybody else?
I'm totally on board.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Yes. Awesome. So next comment comes off of YouTube from a Mike Flegel. Fly like an eagle.
Flegel? Sure.
Yeah, we're going to go with
Flegel. Like a Flegel?
Says, cool, I just wrote a proposal on this topic for my technical writing class. Tomorrow itself was one of the 3 methods I mentioned for space advocacy and specifically highlighting the successes of NASA's COTS initiative and SpaceX keep spreading the word. Anybody want to go into what NASA's COTS is for? Mike?
COTS for the Commercial Orbital Transportation Services, otherwise the program that developed the Commercial Cargo Program.
Perfect. See? There you go. Thank you. We try to shy away from 3-letter, 4-letter, and pretty much any other acronym other than something that's widely recognized like NASA. And then, Lisa, I feel like this comment kind of speaks to you and your communication just kind of in general. There you go. That's all I have to say about that.
I'm just glad that people are talking about the show. So.
Yeah, Mike, thank you for bringing us up as one of your examples as science communicators.
Yeah. Super awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all kind of try to do our own little bit every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, having our tomorrow mugs and our tomorrow pins and that kind
That's
of
how
thing.
people find out about us. It's by people liking what we do and telling other people about it, getting them involved, spreading the word, and having those conversations about space. And I think that's the most important part of the show, is having those conversations and stimulating those conversations with other people. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The next comment comes off of YouTube. This is one from Stefan Schuler. Said, when did the big red spot appear on Jupiter? I vaguely remember that there was a big asteroid impact at some point. Could such an event cause a long-lasting disturbance? Jared, this one speaks to you for some reason.
Yes, it does. How long has the Great Red Spot been on Jupiter? That's a great question. Nobody knows. Because back when we actually decided to start aiming telescopes up instead of at the horizon, that's when the Great Red Spot was first seen. It's often credited to the astronomer Robert Hooke in 1664 as the first official observation of the Great Red Spot, which means that it has been around for at least 350 plus years. Now, when did it start? We have no idea, because there's just no real way to look at a storm or sample it and say, this is the exact point in which it began. Also, we don't understand the mechanisms behind it as well. That was part of Juno's flyby just a couple weeks ago, was to image it and see if it could understand the mechanisms behind the Great Red Spot. But in terms of an asteroid impact, I think you're talking about Shoemaker-Levy 9, which happened in 1994.
Okay.
And the largest of those fragments from that comet that hit Jupiter, it left dust in the atmosphere of Jupiter for about a year after it. So, and from those impacts as well, the dust was actually visible from even small ground-based telescopes here on Earth. So, because I know we have it documented that up at Griffith Observatory, we were able to see the dust clouds left over from the impacts during that time, and we only have a 12-inch telescope up at Griffith. So,
how would you compare those dust clouds to that impact to the dust clouds that we were supposed to see from the L-Cross mission impact?
Itty-bitty. L-Cross would be inconsequential compared to these dust clouds. So, yeah, those huge scars, if you will, in Jupiter's atmosphere were like 2 to 3 times the size of Earth.
Right.
I mean, that's just like a monumental amount of energy released. It's just like, that would have been like apocalyptic here on Earth. It's
huge compared to the fragments.
I'm not going to say it would have destroyed all life on Earth, but it definitely would have taken care of the majority of the species on Earth if something like that were to impact the Earth. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Always a good thing to think about. So
Yeah.
We'll sleep well tonight.
Yeah.
So well before I was born. So that's good.
Yes.
It's good. It's good to know.
If I may too, this might be a little bit esoteric, but we've known about Jupiter for a long time. Even ancient civilizations knew about Jupiter.
Yep,
and something that I've found really interesting, I read a recent article that even the ancient Egyptians might have had telescopes and might have been able to observe the red spot themselves because of their whole mythos of Jupiter, or the name that they had for it back then, being the storm god and being, this great storm, and keeps talking about the storm god. And when that got transferred over to other cultures, like the Greeks and Romans, that's why Jupiter was a storm god. And so it's just kind of a theory that some archaeologists have, but it's still kind of interesting. And if it's true, then the Great Red Spot has been back even as far back as the time of the ancient Egyptians. So that would be crazy.
Yeah, and the Great Red Spot is also changing at the moment too. It's currently about half the size that it was a century ago. So it's getting smaller, and we don't understand, because we don't understand the mechanism causing the Great Red Spot, we don't understand why it's getting smaller as well. So,
is it changing in density or anything along those lines?
We don't know.
Okay.
So that's where this passage, is going to come in handy with that kind of data. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, should be. So await the data. We'll find out soon.
Yay. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you, Stefan, for that insightful comment or question. And then last comment before we kind of wrap some things up here comes off of YouTube from Metzon Young. At least I'm
It's close enough.
Right. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the National Space Council, its history, and what you think the new one might do and how effective it might be. It's so funny you asked that question. Asking you shall receive. And it also is crazy to me that this question was asked on it was a comment from the last show, And unbeknownst to Metsan Young, an upcoming show actually on August 26th, though about a month from now, we're actually going to have Robert Walker on to talk about this exact topic, which is not to say that we can't add our opinions between here and there, but I think we want to save a lot of that for that particular show. It's going to be very, very interesting. So definitely stay tuned, as it were, and we will bring this back up. You know what I think what I'm going to do is copy and paste this into that show, and so that we can actually reference it right back for you. So a couple things before we go. I want to make sure that we have a huge thank you to even more Patreon supporters. These are our ground support crew. This is people who have donated us or given us $1 or more. You obviously get your name in the show. You can attend Google Hangouts. It's so much fun. Totally stuff. I want you to be able to get your name in the show and be able to find it. Okay, so if you want, again, if you would like to get your name in the show and other fun things, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. And next week, sadly, we lose Elisa.
Sorry, Lisa.
She has to go back down under.
To Australia.
With the name banner change and everything.
It's
very, very sad. But we are going to be doing that one thing that you keep asking us for, and we keep saying we're going to do, and then we don't do, but we're actually going to do it this time. We're going to have a round table discussion, and this one is going to be the all wonderful topic. Oh boy, I cannot wait. This is going to be discussion of SLS or Space Launch System.
Oh, goodness.
Yep.
I'm sad I'm missing it.
So good. I'm so excited. Maybe we'll actually bring out the table too, and we can sit around it, and it will be a round table, right? I think that's good.
That would be awesome.
Ben is cursing my name right now, but he doesn't have a mic, so you can't tell.
Yes.
Also, real quick note, there will be no After Dark next week, as we will also be doing that other thing that we keep saying we're going to do and not do, but we're actually going to do, is a Patreon hangout. So if you're interested in joining us for that hangout that would normally be kind of an After Dark kind of situation, you can donate patreon.com/TMRO. All right, so all of those things said. Ben is saying in the chat room, oh, no guests, so we can Skype Lisa in. I don't know how we're going to Skype Lisa and Mike in, but sure, we can all do all of those
We
things.
can get Lisa on the
Skype
guest
channels.
channel.
I'll be on the guest channel.
All right, we'll just...
It will be 4 a.m. Australian time, so I will be kind of like dark and sleepy, but I can make it. So you will see me again next week.
I think what you should do instead is just stay up the entire time so you're really cranky.
Yes.
I think that would be even better.
I think a lot of us are going to be cranky next week. I have a suspicion. So.
As long as I have coffee, I think I'll be fine.
So good. So this has been a great show. If you are staying with us, if you're watching us live, of course, we're going to have our After Dark. And if you have access to all of that, then congratulations. And if not, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. In any case, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Bye-bye.